Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special finale episode of Got Something For Ya. As always, I am joined by Phil and Ollie, and today we have a very special guest with us. We have the one and only Mike Bloom, entertainment journalist and also podcaster. You may know him from his exit interviews of the Survivor cast. Mike, we are very excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, the pleasure is all mine, especially with that freaking banger of a song. Get us in there. And you just did the switchy thing. Like, God, this is much more of already a highfalutin operation than whatever dog and pony show I've been doing for the past 10 years. What have I been doing? It's all gobbledygook compared to what I'm watching right now.
It's quite the production. It got quite the budget over here at Survivor Now podcast. And Phil, Ollie, as always, I mean, what an incredible episode to finish us out at the season. I was at the Bryce and Wen present party. How did you all spend watching the finale? Phil, let's start with you.
Look, last week before work is over, holiday break, I was working hard this week, and this Wednesday to come home and watch a finale felt really good. So though I did it by myself on my couch, it was a nice treat to the end of the day.
Yeah. And Ollie, I know you had to wait till the next day to watch it.
Yeah, obviously as the Brit, I did the pre-show with Randy and then had hyping everyone else up, and then I hyped myself up to go to bed. And then I went and rewatched it the next morning, but I was excited.
To be fair, I think that you probably had a reasonable expectation in your mind where, like, even if it wasn't necessarily a spoiler as to what would happen, you kind of just had to watch the first 20 minutes and you're like, okay, I think I'm pretty sure I know how this story ends.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mike, do you have a different viewpoint now that you're covering Survivor to the extent that you are? Like, do you see the strings at all when it comes to the episodes?
Not particularly in that I'm like, oh, it was this person filming this shot. I mean, obviously getting the chance to go out onto set is something that I very much appreciate and has given me a whole new set of eyes for the show. It's something that, honestly, I wish that every super fan of the show got the chance to go out there and truly see how much of an iceberg of a production it is, that even outside of the cameraman directly filming all the great stuff in front of us, there's everything that goes on behind the scenes, all the hundreds of people that have spent decades from the beginning crafting this stuff before our eyes. It's something absolutely magnificent, and it's given me even more appreciation for like the choices that they make, even if they don't necessarily work all the time. I think for me, what's happened, and it's been so interesting, I would say, in the rise, I would say, of the past 5 years. And not to say that, profuse amounts of fandom for certain contestants have not always existed, but like to see the rise of stan culture alongside my, I would say, hopefully more objective eye towards the contestants. Like, I just want to see good TV happen. I don't honestly necessarily root for certain contestants or against certain contestants unless, they're doing anything that really stems outside the realm of the game. I just want the most interesting thing to happen at the end of the day, whatever can make for a good discussion. And so it has given me, I think, a bit of different perspective as to how to watch the stories unfold, whether it's like being along for the ride in the chaos of a season 46 or perhaps more of a season 47 where it was a little more anchored in, particularly in these last couple episodes, one person's journey and trying to follow if they'd be able to pull it out in the end.
Yeah,
Totally.
And let me tell you, I think there are really a bunch of different ways to enjoy Survivor. Just like you said, in this form, we got to watch sort of Rachel's journey to the point that you sort of started this episode going, okay, look, we sort of know where this is going. The second she wins that first challenge, I feel like most of us absolutely knew where it was going. But, I don't think that I would really change this for anything else. I really liked that we got to watch Rachel's journey for at least the second half of the game, especially for me. At the start of the game, I sort of counted Rachel out, if I'm being completely honest. So it was nice to sort of watch her come back around in the second half.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it was almost too good to be true that this would be Rachel's ending in a sense where we saw the edit kind of really build her up. I said ever since that one episode where she got that advantage at that saw trap of a journey where the anchors were falling into the water, like it was written in the stars. And also hello to our live chat, Roy. You're at the grocery store. What are you picking up?
Oh, you're going to run into Carter at the grocery store? That's a very deep cut reference. I'm glad you guys laughed along.
No, Roy, honestly, thank you so much for joining. I love that you acknowledge that Rachel does not, in fact, go out at fire. I know that you were pretty certain about that the last few streams, but we love having you here. And as always, as we get into today's episode, please feel free to be like our additional co-hosts and interact with us in the live chat. But why don't we get started with finale part 2 with this episode, where we start out with our final 4 at camp. And I know that Teeny's feeling great. They just got rid of Genevieve, which is a big deal for them. And everyone's on top of the world. We're starting to get those sort of recaps of gameplay. This is where it's starting to bleed in a little bit.
Yeah, though it's like a recap after the previously on that was also followed by a literal previously on that was then followed by this. Like, look, I think, by and large, the 2-week part of the finale was probably the more to do rather than like the 4-hour stuff. I think the first half of the finale was a lot of fun, though it fortunately suffered at the back half here. But it also doesn't help when feels at the beginning they're trying to maybe stretch things out a bit by doing a summary of each of the 4 players, and then we go to the challenge. Then we'll get each of the final 3's opinions going into the final tribal council. Take or leave the fact that this after show for this season was like pretty much 20 minutes with commercials. But I think part of it might have been some of the stretching they did at the beginning.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But I will say, I did appreciate right at the start, though, we did kind of get a confessional from each person. I loved kind of hearing their elation. And even though we knew kind of after a while what was going to happen, I just like that we had that individual moment with each person, because we do know that sometimes Survivor likes to unbalance and edit for everyone. So I was just happy to see everyone get their moment.
Though I will say I would say it gets pretty unbalanced towards the end of this episode in terms of who we hear speaking. It definitely, as we go along, we start seeing that it narrows in on Sam and Rachel throughout the rest of the edit of this episode. But we really waste no time and get right to that final immunity challenge, which it was interesting. I'm glad there was a little change of pace from the endurance comp that we usually see. Although we do have a poll question about that, so I'm curious to see what our viewers say about this.
Yeah, it is interesting because the final 5 challenge that they did last episode is typically what we're seeing nowadays from a final immunity challenge. It's more dexterity based. Even that one still had a little bit of like a physical element in the beginning, but it's usually some motion, doing the letters, of course, the upside down U, or stacking the bowls and the balls, which is what last time was. So it's interesting that they went for a bit more of like a spectacle size final challenge, which was the running thing in Survivor for a while, right? Like that was the big thing that Sophie beat Ozzy on in South Pacific. I think the last time they really did it was Game Changers. So I'm glad to go back to it. Does not help the chin waggers in the comments saying that like this was fixed for Rachel because they gave her a puzzle in the final immunity challenge. But I love the side of this because it does mean sort of like ending on a big note rather than the rather small scale. Okay, we're just gonna do the same challenge we always do.
Yeah, and Mike, it's funny because I think that you sort of talked about this a little bit earlier about what the motivations of the people behind the scenes. A lot of times it just comes down to they want to make good TV. And so when a lot of people are talking about why did they do this challenge? Was it to benefit Rachel, benefit Sam, whatever? You want to know what I think it is? It's the simple fact that in a broken up 2-part finale, they don't want to have this part have only one challenge and it be super static and slow. I think they really wanted something big and grand for your for your 2-hour block, and that's what we have here for a final 4. And for what it's worth, Rachel winning both, it didn't really change too much. I don't think. I mean, switch one with the other. I guess the only real possibility is that Genevieve sort of breaks what our eventual truth is, but I was okay with this.
I can confirm, because I found this somewhere, it might have been when I was doing my social search, that because Survivor wanted this 2-part finale, that's why they switched the challenges around. It was originally that final 5 was meant to be the final challenge.
Hey, you could see that a little bit, right? Like they probably shrink the lanes, but like there's a nice little rightward patch of dirt over there that could have been the perfect place for a 5th lane.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely in the room.
Yeah, it does look like that. It did look a little off balance to that point. I actually didn't even notice that little stretch of land, so that's a good call out there. I thought it was a fun challenge. You know, I missed those challenges that were like the giant ones with the different obstacle courses to the different areas of it that everyone had to go and grab something to. So it was like a little callback to that. I was okay with it. And to Phil, to your point, I don't believe that production would be like, oh yeah, let's set up this extremely huge obstacle course because it ends in a puzzle for Rachel to solve. Like they just don't think that way, in my opinion. But it came down to a thrilling ending. I was nervous for Rachel because everyone started looking at her puzzle. And then when Jeff went over that first time and there was something wrong with it comes down to that moment of like, is she going to see the mistake? When they did a close-up of it, I couldn't even see the mistake. So I was like, how is Rachel going to?
Yeah, that was really, really exciting. I'm going to be honest. I love this challenge start to finish. And I like the lead changes. It started off, Sam is in a crazy, a far stretch and he just gets held up at that obstacle with the ball and the rope. And to me, like, if one person was just running this challenge start to finish, there'd be Sam or Rachel or Sue or Teeny. I don't think that I would have liked it as much as I did this, where you sort of had a bunch of different lead changes, things changing, even Sam getting behind at that part. He ended up coming back again and being first to the puzzle. Yeah. So it really was fun and enjoyable, and it left me sitting there being like, "Oh my God, who is going to win this final challenge?" And that was it ended up being very, very exciting for me. Also, want to say, I think that Jeff is coining a new phrase when someone goes over to look at someone's puzzle, because he's used it a couple times here, where he says, "If you're looking at someone's puzzle, that just means that you're behind," or something to that effect.
Yeah.
I noticed he's used it a couple times in this season, and I don't think that I've heard him use like a consistent phrase about that before. I like it.
Is there an agenda behind it? Is he trying to like motivate the person in front of like, don't you worry, they're only doing it because they're catching up? Is it more so like admonishing the people that are copying to be like,
yes. I think a little bit, Mike. I really do. I think that there's a little bit of like, hey man, if you're over here looking at someone else's puzzle, you're clearly behind, and I think that it's nice motivation for the person behind, and I don't know. I thought it was fun.
I was going to say, come on, we've seen Jeff now for 47 seasons. We know that was Jeff being shady in the best way possible. That was
not a lot of spicy Jeff this season, but like there was a little finish on the tongue right there at the end.
A little spicy.
He peaked too quickly with telling what was it, Sue, that he was going to shank her if she doesn't give something back earlier in the season. I think he peaked.
Yeah. There was something about like don't make me get my knife. I think at one point.
Yeah, and that was. I was like, oh my God, there's too much spice.
He's finding his levels. We're 47 seasons in. To your point, also it's like trademark. Gotta get a new phrase. We gotta keep things fresh when it comes to the common phrases that we know Jeff says.
I also think it depends on the cast. Like 46 was just giving him so much goofy malarkey that he decided to follow along with the cushion and everything. This time around, right, this is a bit more of like a down-to-earth cast with a couple of exceptions. Much more of their wild work was done behind the scenes rather than in front of their faces. And so maybe Jeff felt like it was the props would not necessarily work. Instead, he'll give props, or maybe perhaps the opposite for choosing to copy off a puzzle.
There you go. I was gonna say, was 46 the popcorn at Tribal Council, or was that this?
Oh yeah.
Oh, we have Megan in the chat. Welcome, Megan. Hello, Bessie. Shout out to Ollie, Mike Bloom. Love ya.
Oh, love you too, Megan.
As always, we do have our live chat open, so if you want to interact with us, go ahead. We love showing your comments and interacting with each of you, but we have to give a huge congratulations to Rachel, who matches a record in Survivor history with those 4 immunity challenge wins. I mean, it's incredible. I love seeing these type of moments play out, and you could tell from her reaction that this meant something really deep to her. Not only was it safety and the ability to make it to that final tribal council, but also to meet that record. I mean, that's a huge deal.
Oh God, yeah. Like, well, she said it in a deleted scene that was kind of the whatever scene. And she said, she was like, I want to be in that elite group of women. So I think that's partly what it was. Obviously, she's just made the final 3, so there's going to be that as well. But I think there is that emotion of, I have now joined an elite group of women on Survivor that have only won 4 like individual immunities. So it's a special moment because I think the last time it was done was Chrissy in Healers versus Heroes versus Hustlers.
Yeah. Now, that said, she also, I think, has enough of a head on her shoulders to say, yeah, but also at this point, it was 50-50, that Jenna and Kim had won and Chrissy and Kelly Wigglesworth had lost. So it's not like a slam dunk. But to me, this felt like a perfect representation of just Rachel playing a game that she did not expect herself to play, which is not to say that, like, she counted out her skills in challenges. And I think, Jeff has called her one of the most, well-balanced players that we've seen in quite some time. And I think that does show. But, I got the chance to, as we'll probably get into, talk with Rachel quite a few times before her respective Survivor experiences. And nowhere in there was she saying, yeah, and when in doubt, I'll just fall back on beasting out the challenges and wearing the necklace, a record-tying amount of times. I think there's probably a part of her that was a little surprised at herself that she was able to pull into this, which almost makes it more impressive that perhaps, unlike some of the men in particular that were able to bank on that physicality and probably did coming in, I don't think that was part of Rachel's game plan.
Yeah, and I think that makes it a lot more exciting. I mean, I also remember Franny being in a similar sort of box where Franny, I don't think that she went out there, resting on the fact that she's, this big, alpha, I'm going to win every challenge. I think it just happened. And I think I personally like when those things happen a little bit more because it shows that they just had a more well-rounded game. They were relying on more than just challenge prowess. And look what we have here. Rachel, 4-time winner.
Yeah, and seeing people surprise themselves with their abilities, like it's inspiring. As a viewer, I'm like, I wouldn't go in thinking that I would win immunity challenges. So to see someone have that same thing, and I think when we get to Andy's question at that final tribal council, like I think he was sort of playing at this as well. I like seeing Rachel surprise herself in her abilities, and it's just I like seeing people do that. But she wins, and that means that 2 people are about to be sent to fire, and Rachel very quickly is like, Sam, Teeny, have fun, practice that fire making, and she's helping Teeny because she wants Sam out of this game.
Can we talk about that? What do we think about her sort of just coming out and saying, hey, no need to scramble, no need for discussion. You're going to fire. Sue, you're coming with me. What do we think about that? Did we like it? The choice?
To be fair, everyone has been so upfront with her a mere couple days ago. I think, it was probably a decision that they were banking on. I don't know if Teeny necessarily figured that they were going to get taken. And so she has seen as recent as a couple days ago how frantic Sue can get when she feels like she's in danger, wants to assuage her a little bit. It's the precipice of her birthday. Give her an early gift. Let her take the day off.
Yeah, I was under that same thought. I was like, look, if they pretty much know, why not just rip the Band-Aid off and let them know? Matthew, Ollie, did you sort of think the same thing? Or
yeah, well, here's the thing with Rachel is that especially I think what Rachel was doing was so perfect, whether or not it was intentional, but she was sort of sticking to her through line of loyalty in the game. She was able to go to that final tribal council saying that I was loyal to the people that I was loyal with, and I rewarded people who were loyal to me. And I think that by letting Sue off the hook here was even more of evidence for that story for Rachel. So again, whether or not it was intentional, I mean, there's no advantages that can be played at Final Four. So there's no harm in just being like, all right, go practice, And I think also Rachel kind of lucked out in seeing that Sam was really struggling when it came to making that fire.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of is there a record of whether or not you should help someone make fire, right? Because obviously it did not work in Rachel's case with Teeny. I was trying to remember in Island of the Idols, I think it may have worked when they helped Dean to beat Lauren. Like this aspect of kind of ganging up to try to beat one person in fire, how much that's worked versus how much it hasn't.
Yeah, that is a good question. I know, obviously, there's, I think everyone remembers Jam Jam helping Carson. Same thing, Carson ended up losing. So, yeah, does the person being helped, how often do they actually win? That is a good question.
Well, I also wonder, does the person who in the pre-fire making challenge edit, where they're all practicing, for some reason, I've convinced myself that the person who does the best in this moment is the one that ends up getting out. You know, like here's Sam struggling so hard, and the story is really he uses the letter to motivate himself, but we see Teeny so far ahead in terms of their ability to actually build the fire. But I have to say, as a viewer, seeing this from Sam, I was kind of like, he might get it. He might get it just based on how much it was building.
Yeah, I
Oh,
wonder.
God, yeah.
I wonder if we have to track like the order of things, right? Like if you are the first to be seen making a fire in this segment, does that mean that you are going to lose? Because I feel like we got this with Jake as well. I don't. I'm trying to remember if we got this with Liz, whether it was the like. But we've seen this basically every time now. The person comes back, oh my god, I can't believe I'm in fire. I don't know how to make fire. And then by the end of the segment, they're like, I've got something. I think I've got a shot.
Yeah, I mean, Ollie, do you have any thoughts on this?
I mean, it was really nice to see this kind of story with Sam. Like, Sam was kind of the last person on my draft, so obviously there was a willingness of me being like, please make it to the end so I get some points, thank you. But I was really worried for him at this point, and then it was when he kind of had that letter from home, that was where I kind of saw it, and I went, this could be the fake out, because it's like, you wouldn't just randomly give us this emotional thing of Sam to then make him go out of fire. So when I saw this moment, I was like, okay, there is a come behind story that could happen. And then obviously, lo and behold, when we get to fire, we will see what happens.
I mean, this fire making challenge was absolutely insane to watch, especially at the watch party with Bryson when present. That was being with that crowd was a wild experience. But I agree with Megan. This is a great point. I would love to know how many people have gotten screwed over by their seat placement because of the wind direction. I was actually really surprised that Jeff said, and I don't think I've noticed this before, but at Fire Making Challenge, he said to them, go pick your spot.
Yep.
I wonder if they should start doing a rock draw.
Yeah, I mean, I remember very specifically Ghost Island. Like they were like, okay, I'm gonna sit here, and yeah, I'm not sure what the record is, because also the fact of the matter is every tribal council set is built differently, and so it's not like it's always going to be the same structures that can block the same winds. I mean, the point about the wind is that it is something that you can't necessarily pick. What is interesting is that, of course, a lot of people in the moment were like, Teeny, just stand up, like. Spread yourself wide like you're scaring away a bear. Use it to block the fire. I did ask Teeny about this, and they are allowed to do that. It's just in that very frantic moment, all they basically settled their brain into was like, throw more sticks on, it'll be fine. And also the fact that, yeah, the wind might have been blowing away for like 5 seconds. For the next 5, it might blow back over, and then the rope is snapped anyway.
Yeah. Also, can I just make a point? Kenzie was in that left spot last season and won fire.
There we go.
Ooh. I mean, you're right. It is dependent on the wind. And let's face it, like the wind, it seemed like it didn't become as much of an obstacle to Teeny until further on in the challenge when it started blowing because I like what Jeff said, like wind is kind of a good thing when it comes to fire. You know, it's constantly airing it so that it goes up more. But it just, this was really sad to watch because we saw Teeny make the fire. Like we saw Teeny was clearly the fastest at getting a well-built fire started, but it just the world said no.
I will say it does almost match the theme of their story this whole entire season, and it's just things not working out. And from jump, I mean, even think about way back when Teeny was showing Keyshawn where Rome hid his idol, and Rome comes trotting down the path. I mean, I think of the very first mistake they made, voting off Asia. I mean, the amount of times that we just sort of see things not work out for Teeny has been a constant, and at the very least, I think that felt in a big way. It did feel a little bit like, oh, well, of course this is going to happen. It feels like Family Guy's Meg. You know, you expect a certain thing from Meg every episode, and when you get it, it's like, oh yeah, well they fulfilled the role. Very sad though, very sad.
I've also mentioned on the subject of the wind, if we remember, of course, the iconic Chris Underwood fire making challenge was indoors.
Yes.
So if the wind was like so terrible, it actually would have changed locations. But yeah, this is really unfortunate. But to your point, Phil, I'm unfortunately kind of like a representation of Teeny's story. I think a lot of people have always been doing the butterfly meme ever since Owen of like, who's the Charlie Brown of the season? And when Teeny got a hole burned in their bag, it kind of just cemented that for them. And this is unfortunately only helping that case.
Yeah,
definitely. Can I just? I want to walk back a tiny bit because I wanted to say this a little bit earlier. I couldn't get it out. What I think is so funny about Sam saying that he doesn't know how to make fire is let's go back to when Genevieve was talking about her fake idol and looked and said, "Guys, this is a fake idol," and everyone said, "You're lying. We don't believe you because you've been putting up the full game." I think it's so funny that when Sam was telling them, "I don't know how to make fire," I think there was a seed in each of their brains that was like, he's definitely lying. He's lying. And I just thought that was very, very funny. And we didn't get to touch on that.
No, but I was like, what's the point of someone lying about not being able to make fire here unless they're trying to get into fire to, I guess, to increase their chance, like their win equity. But when Teeny was going on about like, Sam's trying to get in my head, I'm like, he's only going to get in your head if you let him get in your head about this. It seems like you're going to fire, so just concentrate on that.
Yeah, I just thought that was a funny bit and a bit of the through line.
Yeah. Hey, Lewis, welcome to the chat. I like this comment about Keyshawn. Keyshawn has been mentioned in every episode. It feels like when Genevieve was back in the game. So, we miss Keyshawn. And I will say with Teeny in particular, Teeny loses here, and this was heartbreaking to see, as we already discussed. I want to give mad props to Teeny because although game-wise, I didn't necessarily agree with all of their moves, and I think we saw that at times they may have gotten in their own way. I got very emotional this episode listening to Teeny, especially when Teeny took ownership and accountability over their sort of one-sided beef with Sam. I love how they described what they were feeling in terms of their relationship with Sam. I think it was so well said. I think it was such great representation. And I really appreciated that factor. And I think Teeny is a very well-spoken person. And if they come back and are able to find a way to play more so from the top, I think they would be a very formidable opponent.
I mean, that's my favorite thing about Teeny is just how open they are. And look, I say this with love because I get the great pleasure of getting to talk with many of these people and sometimes become friends with them. But like when you go on a reality show, you have to have at least somewhat of a sense of ego. You have to go on with at least a sense of like, I can do this. I'm the perfect person to be on the show for this reason. And so when that happens and you inevitably fail at that more times than not, you tend to maybe obfuscate some of your shortcomings or ways in which you did not do well. And for what it's worth, Teeny, especially out there on the island in the moment, incredibly, candid about, yeah, I'm confused. Yeah, I made a mistake here. Yeah, you know what? I'll admit I'm making some unfair judgments about Sam based on preconceived biases, based on my own journey with gender and identity. Like, that is so refreshing to hear somebody say out loud in the moment. Did it better their chances of winning $1 million? No, but like, God, it felt so therapeutic almost.
Yeah.
Like, have them realize this stuff in the moment rather than have inimitable amounts of people online psychoanalyze them to try to figure out why they're feeling what they're feeling.
And they really had the wherewithal to come around. I mean, right before they actually do get their torch snuffed, they're sitting there. They're actually giving so much love and props to Sam that I was almost like, okay, pipe down, Teeny. We're still rooting for Rachel here. I really like, and I think it shows a level of maturity, right? For them to be able to sit there and be like, okay, I did talk all this, nonsense on Sam, but here we are at the end. This is how I really feel, So, definitely enjoyed watching Teeny this season.
And I know that we have a lot of Teeny fans who have watched our show over the week. So I'm so sorry that Teeny got out here. But you know what? Making it to the finale is no easy task. So that is something to celebrate. And also, going out in fire in the way that they did. It was very competitive. I think they should be very, very proud, no matter how disappointing it may be. But we have our final 3. Now, before we talk about their preparation for the final tribal council, let's take a very, very quick break, and then we will be right back to discuss the final portion of this episode.
Hi, Survivor Now podcast listeners. I am Katie from KT Designs, better known as Katie Tedesco Art on both Instagram and Etsy. I have been designing and selling Survivor products for over 7 years at my Etsy shop, including replicas like hidden immunity idols and Survivor trading cards with all of the players' stats on the back. I am so grateful for Survivor Now for giving me this shout out and helping me reach even more superfans. I love listening to their podcast. So if you are looking for some really unique reality TV products for yourself or to give a superfan in your life, come check out my Etsy shop at www.etsy.com/shop/KatieTedescoArt.com.
You have commercials?
This is a whole moving operation.
Production.
This is absolutely bananas.
We're very happy to, be able to share KT Designs. We love their work. So, it's nice. It's nice. We got some commercials. We got some credit.
Holy
We try.
moly. This is like staying at the Ritz-Carlton, not realizing you're
Yeah,
living at a Motel 6 for a decade. This is a highfalutin operation.
we try.
We try our best. We try our best, Mike.
We try. We do. We have our final 3. We have Sam trying watermelon for the first time and realizes he's not a fan.
I mean, sometimes depending on the watermelon you're trying, it can be much more water than melon. So maybe he got that
True.
I've had some of the watermelon out in Fiji and it's good. It's not like the most sweet, succulent summer day treat that you may want, but it's also a fun way to end that arc as well.
Mm.
That was the most important story arc of the season, was
Yeah.
Sam trying all the fruits and all the foods he's never had before. I mean, was there anything for all of us here that stuck out about their preparations for Final Tribal Council? I mean, I feel like this moment, it's kind of more of the same of what we've seen in other seasons. We know how they're going to talk about their game, and then we see that jury segment with the terribly uncomfortable close-ups, if you ask me. I think they could have pulled out a little bit farther when it came to the close-ups of the jury. But, we just get the moment building everyone up in terms of why they could win Survivor at the end.
Yeah, did you guys like the return sort of like this fallen comrades jury hybrid?
Yeah, I loved it. I actually liked the close-ups. It was given America's Next Top Model for me.
Oh
I just
my
wanna say that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I always like this portion of the game just in an overall sense. When you're sort of looking at the last few people, they know that they've gotten to the point where they are going to be able to argue their, for their chance to win, to be the sole survivor. And, the competition is still there. I feel like, all the obfuscating and misting, all that stuff gets dropped to the side. I always really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's time to just look internally, analyze your game. But I still feel like there is still a game to be played at this final tribal council where we see the 3 of them sort of go at it. I mean, we unfortunately, with just the way that the questions panned out, it really did feel like it was more so targeted towards Rachel and Sam in terms of where the jury's minds were at. I felt bad for Sue here. I'm just going to say.
I don't know if I feel bad for Sue, but I did. And look, these two know I've been the biggest Sue defender this whole entire season.
Yeah,
I'm a huge Sue
You
fan.
hate Kyle.
I
Listen, we
Yeah,
talk
he
about the internet might have a come around on a Sue-esque opinion depending on how you.
We've got a question about that. Don't worry, we've got.
Ooh, okay, I'm excited about this. What I will say is I do love the amount of love that they showed Sue when she finally came out with her big line. I'm 59 years old and I kicked all your asses. That is a line that she has said since the pregame. And we had a seconds to talk before going on here. I told Mike, I listened to your pregame coverage. Hearing her say that in the pregame and then actually seeing it on my screen was actually satisfying for a super fan like me. Love Sue. I love what she did here, but I don't think that she should be too hurt.
It's just I think unfortunately a par for the course that comes with the final 3. I think it's just very rare. Either that 3rd place finalist is going to be somebody that's like pretty much shrugged off and completely ignored, or it's going to be a Russell and Heroes versus Villains, like you are getting 0 votes and here is why, and I will like continue to tell you about all the things that you did wrong. Sue, I think, is much more in the Ben camp of last season of like,
Mhm.
yeah, this is more of a 2-horse race just due to the fact that there had to be 3 bodies there. I'm so sorry, Sue, but like, it's not going to be you. And it's interesting because, I mean, when you look in retrospect, especially as to like Andy doing something like Operation Italy, I think it's for him to prevent this nightmare scenario where he was in a situation like Sue, where like he makes it to the end and everyone's like,
Yeah.
oh, goofy, messy Andy, you're not going to win. So let the grown-ups talk. You just sit in the corner.
Is there anything that, okay, let's say all four of us are able to get that final spot at the final tribal council on the season that, we're playing. What would you do if you sensed that you felt that you were the number 3 in that final 3? Is there any strategy that you could do to interject more or to sell it? Phil.
As Mr. Bellhop Ryan said way back on his season, you go there and you try your best to lie yourself to a win.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a shame, but I in a weird way, I believe Ryan Ulrich, I think he's the only person to come out and say in a confessional where he's like, let's lie and see how far I get. Like, I don't know if I've ever heard that any other time.
Yeah, and he faced the Sue-like situation, remember, where Desi was like, all right, respectfully, to start things off, Ryan, you have no shot at anything tonight, so kick back, buddy.
Right. But I think it's interesting because I say that almost obviously tongue-in-cheek. I don't think there's much that you can do, Matt. And I think that's sort of the issue. And that's why, to be fair, during that tribal, I was really excited to see Ryan try to pull something out, and he wasn't able to. Here, I think that Sue almost went the more respectful route. She wasn't going to try to, come up with machinations that weren't real. Instead, she was just like, look, this is what I did. This is what I'm proud of. All these things are true. It's just it's not enough in this case.
I would say if you are not given space, take it. I think you should just listen. Would you become the annoying person who interrupts every single answer, even if you're not involved? Sure. But you're getting your space out there and you're saying something. And even if, someone's going back and forth about their answer, you say like, hey, can I piggyback off of that for a second and talk about how that actually relates to me? And then maybe you incorporate some of those Phil lies that you sprinkle in. Like, yes, this is the jury's time, but if you really feel like you don't have a shot and no one's giving you credit, you got to make that credit for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess my only fear there is that it gets contentious. I remember who was it? Island of the Idols. Nora. It felt like people were angry that she was trying to like ask and beg for credit for certain things. And maybe I'm just thinking about myself. I'm not brave enough for that. I think a jury being like, you're nothing, we're not giving you anything, that's one thing. But for them to literally try to, I would never want to get too contentious with a jury. That would scare me personally. Ali, I feel like you would take on that challenge.
Oh yeah, see, if I knew that the jury wasn't giving me a shot, I would just like make digs every time. I just like make my point and then be like, oh, and that's why you're sat over there having to decide who one of us wins. So keep chatting your thing and I'll just chat even higher. But that's just me.
Well, listen, like for me personally, I would do like the RuPaul's Drag Race rule of Snatch Game, which is you don't wait for Ru to ask you a question in order to get involved. And Mike, I think that's aligned with what you were saying. So, and I do think there is a way. Phil, I see your point, and you definitely, it's a fine line, but I feel like I would try to throw that Hail Mary and try to at least fight for my place to receive a few votes, even if I do end up pissing people off. Either I'm not going to leave a memorable thought in their mind to vote for me or not, and they're just not going to, or I'm just going to make them upset and they're going to use that as a reason.
I mean, the tough thing about Sue is that she had her Hail Mary in her pocket with what she opened with, but the Hail Mary turned into a 5-yard pass downfield.
Yeah.
And now you're like, okay, what plays do I make now? Wow. Everything's been expended.
Yeah.
I still have this thing that I feel like if Sue was able to keep her idol secret and then showcase it at the end, that could have been another Hail Mary. I do like Megan's comment in the chat.
Yeah.
You have to treat it like a job interview. Make everything about your game sound amazing and intentional, even if it was me. Like, it's true. Like, I think we've all said, like, we've all kind of touched on it a bit. Like, you do have to just, like, like in your resume, just like, make it look a little bit better than maybe it is, which I think is fair. I think everyone would do that in a way. Also, Mike, Randy has a question, and I know he'll hate all of us if we don't ask you it.
Okay. Go ahead.
Randy asks, should we go back to a final 2?
Mm.
Woo! I mean, for me, the Survivor purist, I am a very unique person, as is not if it's not been indicated by the past decade of myself out here on the internet. I'm a very odd duck, and one of those odd opinions I hold is that for me, I'm very much a journey above destination person. Some of my favorite Survivor seasons are not necessarily buoyed nor sank by the people that win it. And so for me, I have never been someone that has wholly determined their opinion of a season by the person who wins. So from my perspective, I've always been a final 2 person. It doesn't necessarily matter to me whether or not it's like a 2-horse race, or if it's just like one person slamming down onto the other person. That might happen in a final 2 situation. For me, it just comes down to like a simplicity of structure. And I think that the minute they decided on a final 3, I understood the logic to the point we made earlier. You're making a TV show. You want to make for the most, the most deserving player, the best player, the biggest player makes it to the end and wins. At the same time, it sort of becomes a bit of an if you give a mouse a cookie situation where like, okay, well, now we're doing a final 3. Well, now they're just going to vote off the biggest threat at the final 4. How do we prevent that? Okay, what if we do this fire making challenge where now you don't get voted out at final 4? Okay, now they're going to get rid of this biggest threat at final 5. And so like, it's not like it's not a virus, it's a symptom almost, or a weird thing. It's not a bug, it's a feature. I guess that's the metaphor that I should go with here, of like, that's just the way Survivor is. And yes, it sometimes might not result in the most ideal outcome, the most ideal winner, but why are you trying to then twist all these things in a structure to create an outcome when the idealized form of gameplay is always going to play out, no matter if you make it a final 3, final 4, final 18?
I do want to ask the follow-up question. Now, what do you think about having just sort of inserting more randomness where you don't know what to expect, right? Is it going to be a final 2? Is it going to be a final 3? Is there going to be fire at 4? In that sort of that last turning spot, or does it become sort of like you said, where it's like, it is a game after all, games have rules for a reason. If there's not, if there are no, if there's nothing for you to expect, is it fair at all? Like, where do you land on that, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question because, I've had the very fortunate opportunity to do a little bit of like production consulting as well for a different Survivor franchise, Survivor South Africa. And the place where I usually land is that the more knowledge you give players, the better, because it allows them to operate within that set of rules. And almost always, yes, you will be expending the whole face crack of the century. Oh my God, they're so surprised we caught them button puzzle thing. But it comes at the expense of, if these players are operating under the assumption of like, well, you never know what will happen, they're almost always going to go for like the more conservative option. I don't know if you guys are Big Brother watchers, but like that often becomes the thing with Big Brother is like, if they throw in these big twists to begin with, some people will play very conservatively at the beginning saying, oh, well, we don't know what's going to happen the next week, so therefore I don't want to necessarily make this big move. And so, yeah, it is fun sometimes when these players plan for a final 3 and when it turns out to be a final 2 or vice versa. But at the same time, I do think you could provide a lot of potential if you do tell everyone up front, hey, this is where things are structured, so that they can plot that into their own game rather than be caught by surprise like the round it happens or the round before.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm definitely along that path myself.
And Phil, that is exactly my reasoning why Jeff needs to expose the family letters from home before the challenge starts.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I like it.
Mike. Oh, okay. Anyway, so also we have to talk about my opinion on this is I think 26 days is too short of a time to have a final 2. I feel like in longer seasons where there's more room for gameplay, where it might give players more of an opportunity to build up their resume just a little bit more, so it's more of a face-off. I mean, it's not a guarantee, but I'm thinking of like Australian Survivor, which is like could be up to 50 plus days, and how those typically end in a final 2 as well. And there's a lot more that the contestants can pull from towards their resume. I just think 26 days is a little too short. But
that's valid in terms of a calendar perspective as well. Like, unless you throw in another double boot, and like this time around, was the only season in the new era so far to not have a round where 2 people went home. So unless if they want to extend it to like 27 days or even 30 days, I think they could have more of a clearance to go for a final 2. But yeah, the scheduling might be another reason why they don't want to go for it.
It's true. We're working with how many episodes CBS orders, the amount of days they're there, everything. And then we got our jury questions. Were there any jury questions that stood out? I thought there were a lot of good questions, actually, but were there any that stood out to each of you in particular?
Trying to look at my notes.
I mean, I got to bring up Andy here. This is wild. This is absolutely wild. And this is far and away the most meta jury question we have ever experienced in Survivor, right?
Yeah. That jury question was literally, tell me you are an absolute ultra super fan of the show without telling me you're an ultra. Like the ricochets against like Mike and Ben was quite funny. I found it hilarious. But I also really enjoyed kind of the battling between Sam and Rachel. Like, I really did think, like, when I saw that, I actually did feel like there is a chance it could go either way, because I think both of them started making really good points. I mean, again, I was rooting for Sam a little bit, so I will praise him on his... There were a couple of times his rebuttals didn't work, but there was one that I think really stood out when he mentioned about his perfect voting record and then went on kind of that tangent there. I thought that was really good of him. But I think overall this was like a strong final tribal for me.
So, to be fair, it was only a perfect voting record because he could not vote at the vote he was really left out of when his closest ally went home.
Yeah.
Still helps him.
I will say it's, for me, I guess right in line with you, Ollie, it's not necessarily like any one question that stood out for me, but instead just the actual sparring between Sam and Rachel at the end here. I don't think that you always get to see that. And sometimes you see that, and I think that it is, I mean, and maybe it was here too. I think sometimes you see this sort of direct sparring between 2 contestants, and it ends up being a bad thing, where it is, oh, you should not have gone so, for the jugular for someone else, and instead just kept the focus on yourself. Whether or not that lost Sam his win here, I don't think that's what happened. I think that what happened is that Sam simply did not play the game that Rachel played. But I did find it fun to sort of see them verbally spar each other. It was enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, I think what it comes down to is, like, Sam, I think, was able to put together an incredibly cogent argument. I mean, in a season full of people who make a living on this thing, be it podcasters, broadcasters, etc., it is pretty wild that Sam was the only one left in the end game who had that experience, and he was able to use it to aplomb. And I think he also make like a very salient argument of how, many times fans and players alike do like to acknowledge those that are able to get to an end game position without winning challenges, without using advantages, without, just relying on their own wits and being more vulnerable to be able to scrap through. And it certainly is like a good story on the surface, on paper, compared to, again, someone like Rachel, who, again, the fandom, as was Andy was kind of invoking, might look at somebody who, they had to pretty much win out from the final 7 in order to be sitting there at the end and play an idol. But I also think this goes to show as well why one very specific strategy will not work for every single Survivor season, is that at this point, not only do I think Rachel had built better relationships with people on the jury than someone like Mike and especially like Ben, but also just like Rachel's very unique situation, right? Being targeted as the number 1 threat and like being able to really conquer the competition in so many ways really outweighed Sam's appeal here. What I would compare it to is, to use like a football analogy for Sam, the NFL beat reporter, it's like he was getting walloped at halftime and he staged like a pretty impressive comeback, but he ultimately ended up losing by a touchdown.
All these sports references. I know what you're saying. Do I?
I have my ad.
I mean, I really like seeing the 2 of them go at it too. I very much left this final tribal council before the voting feeling like this isn't as much of a slam dunk for Rachel as I thought going into it. And then I also, at the same extent, I also felt like Sam argued the argument that he needed to in order to sort of build up his game.
Yeah, and look, obviously, I think part of this is on the Survivor editors. They don't want to make it too obvious that Rachel is winning here. But at the same time, it's said all the time. They need the footage, right? If someone put someone else in there, I don't think that they even have the footage to make it seem like someone was this close. I really just think that Sam had a killer final tribal. Debatably a better final tribal than Rachel from what we actually saw. He just did not have the leading credentials to actually win the game. And I want to ask you, Mike, do you think this is the greatest losing final tribal we've seen? I mean, I think this is close. I really think this is close. I think Sam did a phenomenal job here, but I want to hear what you think.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm trying to look at all the people who had lost in the final tribal. I mean, I always go back to Hannah Shapiro. I remember her doing a surprisingly commendable final tribal council performance, despite the fact of the perception that she sort of had come in with. I think she did a really good job explaining the intentionality behind those moves. So I always go back to that. I think even Charlie last season, that jury vote was a hot mess with people being swayed one way or the other, but it does seem like Charlie was able to sway some votes onto his side with the way that he was able to explain his intention behind this stuff. I do think Sam is up there, though. And I think it's because, to an earlier point, like, Sam gave the pitch that he needed to give. I don't think he necessarily, he didn't outkick his coverage that much. Maybe a couple things of, like, the perfect voting record was, like, technically true, but maybe not true in terms of its intentionality. But I think he did a very good job knowing this is the exact argument I have to make to differentiate myself from Rachel. And he did. What I think it ultimately came down to, and, I only had the chance to talk with one of the jurors in the form of Teamy, but what I imagine is a lot of people came in expecting Rachel. Sam brought up a lot of good points, but at the end of the day, they looked back on it, and Rachel did an admirable enough job that they're like, okay, you didn't lose it at Final Tribal Council. We're going to vote for you.
And I'm going to throw Heidi into consideration here when we're talking about brilliant Final Tribal Council performances. In 44, the way she was able to paint her game very much snuck up on me in the edit. Like, I went into that tribal feeling like it was a tight race between Jam Jam and Carolyn. Right. So I got to throw Heidi in there for consideration as well. But I think that was a great question, Phil.
Thanks. Yeah, and look, I just, we're not on a podcast with Mike every single week. Okay, I need to geek out a little bit. Okay.
Yeah, that'd be torture for you guys.
I know that you are. Please, you are the man of many lists. And look, maybe an off-season list podcast.
Ooh, all right, Phil. I'm giving you all the credit. I'll shamelessly steal your idea. It's a very interesting idea. I mean, the Final Tribal Council, the jury vote, has always been one of my favorite things of Survivor because it is so enigmatic and, like, you can never really nail down what to say to the right person. And I don't know, that might be fun to look over and how, okay, theoretically, if the jury vote, we'll talk about this again as to, like, how many votes Rachel won by. If the jury vote is closed, does that mean the runner-up did a good job explaining things? Does it mean that the winner did a bad job explaining things?
Right.
That is almost never the case. And so, it's always tough to, like, assign a number to how many jury votes should Sam have gotten, because that's not what it comes down to most of the time. But I do think he did a very good job for someone that for the umpteenth time came into this situation as the underdog.
Yeah. The amount of votes that Sam should have gotten is the amount of votes that Sam ends up with. And, we can say, like, oh, I'm surprised that he didn't receive more or less or whatever your views are on it. But, that's what happened is what happened. And we have to give a huge congratulations to our winner of Survivor 47, Rachel, who I agree, Roy. I believe Rachel is one of the most deserving winners of the new era. And I like this question. I think this could have ended in a 3-3-2 vote. Anyone else feel that way? Roy, I thought it might tie, but I thought it was going to be 4-4 with a Stu tiebreaker.
That's the thing. I think, unfortunately, we, in the wake of Franny telling Carolyn in the after show, you changed my life minutes after not voting for her, has made me believe that, like, relationships can hold through, but people like Caroline and Gabe will not necessarily bank on that to vote for someone like Stu no matter what. Caroline especially has expressed in her exit press how close she was with Rachel, and that was a relationship that was largely obfuscated through the edit. And considering as well, they both really value, like, the strategic gamesmanship of Survivor, with no offense to Sue, did make me believe that they would not necessarily, maybe Gabe would, as sort of like an unending loyalty to Sue, but I always thought Caroline was a locked-in vote for Rachel if she made it to the end.
Ah.
That's interesting.
Well, I just want to interject here because I do have one of my questions before we get to praising Rachel. Because obviously it was still a 7-1-0 vote with Sam getting 1 vote. And we have a question from Rob who asks, how do you feel about Kyle voting Sam to ensure Sam came second? Because in afterwards, like interviews and stuff, he has gone on to say part of the reason he voted for Sam was because he felt like Sam deserved at least second because he knew.
Confirmed?
Yeah.
The old Reed Kelly Vidish Bushkauskas move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm personally never too bothered by things like that. I mean, we saw it the same with Danny and Heidi. Danny throwing a vote on Heidi, so Heidi gets second place. I think that, to Matthew's point, if that's the way you want to spin your vote, spin it that way, right? I don't think you can get too bothered by it. But what do you think, Mike?
I could not agree more. From my perspective, and look, I think my best friend Shannon Gus came out with an article this season about how, it's maybe too much of a blanket statement to say the jury is always right. But for me, I'm not living out there with those people 24/7. We can make our base judgments on who they should vote for based on what we see. But the fact of the matter is, if they have built relationships or they build their own rationale, again, within a certain spectrum of things, I don't want any sort of hate or biases to be baked into it, then let them vote how they want to vote. And I think specifically for me, what is kind of grinding my gears is that people aren't really pissed that Kyle did it and like Sue finished third. It's that, oh no, it deprived Rachel of being the first woman to win unanimously. Would that be awesome? Sure. But last I checked, you don't get bonuses to your paycheck for every jury vote that you get. I think that, again, why the jury is such a sticky mess in Survivor is because as long as you get the majority of the votes, you've won. It doesn't really matter by how much. If we were gauging it from that perspective, Natalie White would quantifiably be a bigger winner and a better winner than Parvati Shallow. And with no offense to Natalie White, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I just think it depends on the people you're with and why they choose to do what they do. Like, I think Rachel herself would say, the fact that I won is perfect. Near unanimously, great. Unanimously would have been amazing, but I don't necessarily care about the fact that, she was robbed of an 8-0-0 victory. Could it have been cool? Yes, but I don't think it's like any slight to her game, nor should it be a slight to Kyle for voting the way that he wanted to.
Yeah, and you sort of mentioned in your explanation there. I mean, Rachel said herself, by the way, scariest answer I ever heard anyone give when they asked, "Do you care about your Survivor legacy?" And she sat up there and said, "No, I really don't. I care about winning this game. I don't care about what my legacy might be years on." And I think that that's sort of the thing. Like, I don't think that even Rachel is caring too much 7-1 versus 8-0. I think she's like, look, this was my season and I won.
Oh yeah, that's a question where you're like, what do they want to hear?
When she said that, she was like, I don't care about my legacy. I was like, no, is that what super fans are going to want to hear? Like, are they going to come to her?
Would Rachel have had a perfect game? I forget. Or was she voted?
It's kind of like Jeremy Collins technically had a perfect game, but he nullified 3 votes against him. Like, Rachel got votes. She just played an idol to nullify them.
It was actually Tegwith that apparently made this term up. It was a no-hitter game.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Tegwith. I like that a lot.
Like that
and Mike, we have this thing. I got to bring it up. Starting last year for season 46, we started a tradition where the person who guesses the winner correctly wins Applebee's. It was Applebee's for Survivor 46.
Coveted treasure, yeah.
Yep. This year we decided it was going to be Italian food. Phil and I are able to participate. Ollie is unable to. So if he was going to win, he was going to get a thumbs up. But I said that she was going to win in a tie vote. Phil said that Rachel was going to win 7-1. Phil, congratulations.
Woo!
I owe you Italian food, but you can explain why. You don't have it right now.
We started this at 10 a.m. We usually buy the food before the podcast starts. I don't know. I really wasn't in the mood for Italian at 10 a.m. So I told them maybe we'll table it for a little bit later.
How do you guys feel about going back to 7-1, right? Which was the MO of the first 4 seasons of the new era? Because it's fun to have the close votes. On the other hand, I think, I don't know, after 46, I'm kind of done with like holding each individual juror accountable for like, why did you do this versus why didn't you do that?
The thing for me is I always feel like what I care about the most is how close I feel the players are in terms of their games and how close I feel like the ending is going. Like I was going back and forth between Sam and Rachel. I'm just going to be honest. And I was curious to hear what Sue was going to say in terms of her game. So that's what matters to me as a viewer is thinking it could go either way, no matter how the votes end up being.
I guess I'm right there with you. I was just sort of going to further say, do you think we're ever going to see Sam again?
Like in life, did he just disappear?
On Survivor.
I mean, listen, I made it no secret that I did a lot of prognosticating about Survivor 50. I don't know. It really depends on like if they go really new era heavy. There's a chance. I would say if I was making like a ranked list of who would be most likely to return for Survivor 50 from 47, Sam would probably be number 3, which I think could put him in the hunt. But depending on the pool that you're pulling from, might be a little shallow.
Yeah,
I think Sam might be an alternate.
Oh, well, alternates could go on to win, as we know.
I was going to say, look at Rachel. I think the reason why I sort of asked this in the same conversation of the 7-1 vote, I do think that like getting a vote does sort of matter when you are the second place person wanting to come back on. I think that if he lost 8-0, I maybe this is crackpot theory here. I think that it would sort of diminish his chances to get back on because it's like, dude, you weren't even close. Despite, he at least has the 1 vote going for him in a matter of speaking, but I was just sort of expanding out there.
Well, something that we've been hinting at for this whole entire time is that there's a lot of opinions about this season, how it ended, and social media is largely to thank for that. So, Mike, you've been impressed with some of our transitions here throughout the day, so this one might blow your mind. We're going to transition into our segment, The Tribe Has Posted, hosted by Ollie.
Who made these things?
Randy did.
Oh my God.
Randy in the chat, take your credit.
Yeah.
Randy, get all the flowers and then some, man. I love these little things. Good God, I'm gonna have to hire out to try to get something for my ramshackle operation.
Go for it.
Ollie, you're in charge. Take us through.
Yes. So as people of Survivor Now may know, after the episode has aired, I will scroll through social media and look at every single tweet, every single Instagram story, every single Blue Sky, and even TikTok. And I will openly admit I've got a lot of slides here because there was so much content.
I mean, this is why I wanted to pick the show to be on, not for you lovely gentlemen. But I love this as well, and I would also imagine, compared to the wake of the finale of 46, this must have just been such a dream for you, Ollie.
I've even an hour before we went live, I found another post that I was like, add this to it, change this.
Yes.
So the first slide is all kind of about the reflecting. Everyone is in their feelings about it. You've got Asia, Sierra, Teeny, and Sam kind of hyping up the night because I think obviously it's Survivor 47. It's the finale. Like we wanted to see all these reflections. We had a really lovely one from Sierra kind of reflecting back on her time. Same with Teeny. I will say go read this Instagram from Teeny. It is before the finale airs and just how they talk about, looking back at their younger self and if they could see them now is absolutely beautiful. And then the next couple of tweets are basically everyone giving Rachel love. It's kind of the moment that Rachel wins. You've got Rome. You've got, I think that one is Sierra. And
right, I remember.
Asia.
Yeah, they actually took video footage of like her win being played back, which is like so awesome. I mean, unlike the live reunions, she knew what was happening. Well, you could also say maybe unlike some Survivor reunions, but like see Rachel be able to watch it back and actually take it all in and have now everyone know what she has been knowing since May or June is so awesome. Yeah,
exactly. And it's like, we all got to see everyone kind of let her have that moment. We've still got a couple more. Let me find them.
Yes.
From TK to Teeny, and I've forgotten it's Arnica there. I will just say Arnica was the queen of social media this week. I got so much stuff from Arnica, so we love you, Arnica, for that. But yeah, this is everyone just giving Rachel her love because she did deserve it. There were a few more, but I needed to try and condense because I had too many slides. But we then have all of the posts from the finale. Like when I said everyone was popping off, like everyone was tweeting, everyone was putting Instagrams up. And it was really nice to see everyone. Like you've got Asia's one right in the middle here. Like this doesn't have everyone.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure who all was in there in LA, because I know Sue was not.
Sue was
not. The only people that weren't at the LA one, Sue wasn't, and we'll get to where Sue was, and Keyshawn wasn't there.
Okay.
The only person, yeah.
But he's always there.
Where is
everyone
Keyshawn?
always remembers him.
I cannot.
I mean, he's an ER doctor. He might have gotten, called into the line of duty.
Into work. I was gonna say maybe Keyshawn has all those royalties from his name being mentioned on like almost every episode Genevieve was in. Real quick, I want to give a huge shout out to Minnow, who's one of our amazing viewers in the chat.
We love you, Minnow.
I love Minnow.
We love Minnow as well. Minnow is great. And Minnow, I'm so sorry to hear. I'm wishing you a huge amount of health into the new year.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, I was thinking about you with the wind, Minnow. I was thinking about you during that final fire making challenge. So
I love Minnow. Minnow, I got to meet over the summer when they called into one of the podcasts I did, and they had just recently gotten into Survivor. They were a Big Brother person and like just fell head over heels into it. And so what a year to get into it as well. I've said this before, but I still will hold that 2024 is definitely, I think, the best cumulative year of Survivor in the 2020s.
Oh, God, yeah, agree. Yeah. We love you, Minos, anyways. So we're going to move on. There's some more tweets. We've got all the tweets. We've got
winners in the middle.
The breadwinners in the middle. You've got our iconic little duo, Sam and Genevieve. This was the tweet I was waiting for because I'd gotten everyone else's. And I was just there like, there is no Sam or Genevieve. There is no just Sam and Genevieve. I was waiting for it. So I was happy it was the next day. And then you've also got just on the far left over there, you've got Sam and Andy with some of the producers, Jesse Tannenbaum. And then the amount of stuff I have, I've forgotten what is next.
Yes.
Oh, it's just some of the funny stuff that we had. This is some of the funny tweets. So you've got Sue. We'll go Solentine first.
Sorry.
They're matching it. It's fine. Their matching outfits were I loved
so
it.
Good. I mean, what a duo. It's sad that we did not get a lot of focus on them as a twosome, but getting to find out about them, in post-season press. But like, just how different they are as people, to have them so close to the point that they decide to twins it up at the finale is so much fun.
Yeah. Well, if you followed the social media as much as I did, you would realize that there was so much love between both of them. The amount of tweets I found, like, of both of them giving each other love, incredible. We love these two.
I love the Andy Austin. That is so great.
Yeah. So this is really interesting because the very first time I met Andy was, and I've talked about this before, it was at the finale gathering for Survivor 46, and I had been the finale of Survivor 44. I was about to go out to do interviews for Survivor 46. I had done interviews for 45, and Andy, officially meets me, and he's like, "So was this tell me about this like other Asian guy that you got to talk to?" And I'm like, yeah, I mean, like he has longish hair. His name is, he's, I tried to obviously describe him in as loose details as possible because I didn't want to give anything away. And Andy, of course, went very far in the casting process for 45. And so I imagine when he had heard about and then eventually saw Austin on screen, he was feeling a certain way. So I'm glad that they not only were both able to make their way onto the island, but now have this very fun picture together.
Yes. And then we also have... Yeah, that's the Spider-Man meme. It's the Spider-Man meme. And then we also have our lovely third places from the last 3 seasons, I believe. Aww. It is Ben, Sue, and Jake. My brain went then. But I love this because obviously Sue actually did go to the Bryson Wen event, which was really nice, I saw. I actually have to ask Matthew, how was it? Because obviously Everyone knew everything was going to LA, and then to have Sue there must have been.
And there was so much
lovely.
support for Sue there as well, and she had so many friends and family there to cheer her on. They were all so incredibly kind and so incredibly just ready to just be there for her. So it was a really fun experience. Of course, anytime Sue appeared on screen, lots of cheers, no matter what was happening. So it's just a good experience.
Awesome.
Oh, that's lovely. So our next couple of slides are to show that rivalries are just for show. We have got some iconic rivalries that are just like, do you know what? The slate is clean. We are no longer enemies. I have to say, I do love Tiana's picture with Gabe. Tiana's like, fine, if I have to. It all makes sense. Why they didn't get Gryffindor and Slytherin.
Which is interesting because I feel like Rachel on the surface is more of a Ravenclaw, but I think that she showed a lot of Gryffindor tendencies. She's very much that like, why was I put in this house? I didn't realize it until her feet were held against the fire.
A little Hermione-ish.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very that. And then we also have Sam and Tini. This is what I loved because this is one of the first tweets I found yesterday. Instagram stories, and I just thought it was really lovely because it was both Sam and Tini just showing their love, and then you see, if you watch both of their Instagrams, absolute loves. We're continuing the trend of people coming together and being like, it's all good, but this time with TikToks. I finally got TikToks onto the tribes posted. Arnica, Sam, and Asia all showing the TikToks, and I loved all these because I saw all of these kind of like back to back to back. And it was just nice to be like, right, dust is settled. I don't care. And they're all quite funny. You need to also read kind of the descriptions for them. Sam and Arnica, there was another one of both of them. But I wanted to include this one because Andy was there as well.
Yeah. For me, I mean, there are many reasons why I can never be a Survivor player. But honestly, one of them might be like getting together with this cast and then being like, all right, we're going to film this TikTok thing. And I'm like, oh, okay. Sure. I can't do TikTok for whatever reason. So I think I would like freeze up more so doing that than I would at the idea of blindsiding them.
That's yeah.
I feel the same way actually.
Also, I was just going to say, Randy in the chat has decided that the Jen/Rachel one is one of his favorite posts of the season.
It's great.
I have my favorite post. It is actually Annika's eulogy on her Instagram story the night she was voted off. Top tier.
Oh, and Mike, you and I were both there for that because that was the Rob Has a Podcast.
That was her dressing. This time she actually did attend her own funeral, unlike Rachel, and died to tell the tale. I suppose that was wild. I love that.
I loved it. I remember seeing those tweets, just dying with laughter and just icon. Our next slides are just some fun things we've seen from the cast. Like the cast now all get together. You've got them doing escape rooms. They went to Universal. And this one here is just a lovely one that Soul has put. And it's with him and Teeny and then him and Genevieve. So it's still showing that love. I'm going to move quickly on because, again, I've got so many. I couldn't do these posts without showing the podcast love because Survivor Now was out in force.
Yeah, roving.
And there's a lot of Sue, but we had Avery, we had Matthew, Cara, Abe, and Bruce all at the Bryce and Wen event, and they got some lovely photos. This one here, I will say this is Abe's. It's a video of the Bryce and Wen event. So funny to watch. I would recommend everyone go watch it because it is fun.
Who was your favorite person to meet for the first time, Matt, while you were at the event?
You know what? My favorite person to meet, I'm going to have to go back to the Rob Has a Podcast one because a lot of the people who were at this one I met before,
right.
But I loved meeting Saul. Saul was one of the nicest guys I have met.
Awesome.
He's great. This whole cast has been nice, but he just he came up to me, he didn't know who I was or anything, but was just saw me in the corner and was just like, hi, I'm Saul, and started a conversation and we just started talking. And it's just a great guy. But I'm always excited to see my podcast friends at these events as well. And it's just wonderful. And also Bryce and Wen, as always, thank you so much for throwing these and for having us. It's great to see you too.
Yeah, Wendell in the brief amount of downtime before we see him on our screens again in Extreme Makeover Home Edition.
Very true. I wouldn't know the thing about a meetup, but it's fine. I just sit here and live it vicariously through all of you.
You'll have to make the trip over eventually, maybe for 50.
Trust me, I'm trying to plan something. To be continued. So our next set of posts are just the reflections from the final four. The first one is Sam. He made a lovely post on Instagram and on Twitter, kind of just giving his thanks for everyone, sending out the love. I'm not going to read all that because it's a lot. But you can go onto Instagram and read it yourselves. And then we also have one of each of the other final four. So we have Rachel's in the middle. Sue made an amazing video, which I would say go watch. It just all of her little snippets and just it shows her heart. So watch it. Teeny hasn't really posted anything as of yet. She may have once we were starting the stream. I don't know. But I just love the fact that the first thing Teeny had on her Instagram story was finally being able to post with the cast.
Well, I mean, Teeny is not anything but, if anything, is a social butterfly at the end of the day. Like, it makes sense that they have just been dying to post all the adventures they've been getting to go on with their cast now that, things are officially done. They had to wait until they were the last person eliminated from the season, so they had to wait all that time.
They were waiting.
Is that a stock image? Or is
yes,
that...
it is. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I've seen that as a meme image for a while.
Okay, there we go. I missed the meme. I was like, oh my gosh, that was like...
Can you imagine if it was staged? Wait,
Imagine.
Filmed it. I was like, Lord Jesus.
Shout out to Claudio, which, by the way, that is an incredible name.
Oh my god!
I wrote a song about Saul's vest.
Where is it?
The best live in person. Actually, it was overalls, but again, shirtless overalls at the Robin's Podcast thing. Claudio, if you're able to send that song to our Instagram at Survivor Now Podcast, we would love to hear it. But that sounds awesome.
Yes, and we have one final post before we go into the polls. And it's mainly a question for Mike.
Ooh.
Are we going to have some fun in a couple of months?
We are going to have some fun in a couple months. And this actually segues really nicely into the post that I made on the left here. So I have, again, as was talked about at the very beginning of this podcast, have had the great pleasure and honor of getting to go out onto the set of Survivor. And, I have been able to do these preseason interviews starting with season 39. For 41 through 44, I got to send in questions, which were asked ahead of time. For 45 on, I've been able to do actually live conversations with these players due to just, scheduling things. 45 and 47, unfortunately, I did virtually. But 46 and coming up, 48, I got to go out there, sit down with these contestants, the new crop of people that we are going to watch unfold, play the greatest game, play in the greatest game. I don't know if they'll play the greatest game. Maybe they will. Who's to say? We'll have future legends, future characters, no matter what. It's always a great amount of fun. I am always so grateful to people like Phil and other people who check out the preseason stuff. Listen, I know it's not for everyone. I know it can be a lot, but I have a lot of fun with it. I think it's a way to get to know players outside of the edits that are going to kind of condense them even over, a bit of a ballooned frame of airtime. And I honestly think it's very fun to have players make these big claims about what they're going to do or what they believe in only for those things. I mean, come on. Andy's saying that his Survivor hot take was that there's nothing more overrated in Survivor history than the Idol, only for the Idol to take him out, is like absolutely beautiful. But I mention all that because the post on the left. So for those that are not aware at this point, when I flew out to Fiji for Survivor 46, I got to talk with 20 people, not 18. I talked with the 18 people who were on the cast of Survivor 46, but there is always, for every season, a male alternate and a female alternate, just in case something goes down at the last minute and they have to sub somebody out. The female alternate for Survivor 46 was Rachel. And it was a really interesting point when I talked to her. The cast was actually taking their photo at the time, so she knew she was an alternate, but nobody else did, until the official cast photo was taken, and then everyone was able to figure out that she and the male alternate would not be a part of the cast. And so she and I were talking while all that was happening, and it was such an interesting conversation in that, I still kind of went through some of the motions with the interviews. I kind of asked her some of the similar questions that I usually would, but it was this very interesting emotional headspace where she obviously had just kind of been granted this face front form of disappointment of like, you made your way out here. All these people were making eyes at you, ready for them to either be your biggest competition or your greatest friend, only to find out that you weren't a part of it. But on the bright side, she very much had this singular mentality in her head as she talked through, everything that she wanted to do with the game of Survivor. When, not if. This idea of like, listen, if this was a way to get my foot in the door, the next time I'm kicking it down and taking the world by storm. And even then, I felt like she had a really great kind of cerebral head for the game. She watched a lot of international Survivor as well, so she is like a really true blue super duper fan. And I was really excited for the opportunity that she would get to be able to come back. When I talked with her for Survivor 47, she was in a really good spot. She had done, some more preparation. This was kind of an opportunity for her to kind of warm up the car a bit. Like she had been through the process of decompressing and simultaneously riling up her anxiety, sitting in this state where you can't talk to anybody for an entire week until your feet hit the sand. And she told me that she felt at that time for Survivor 47, it was right. What she told me in my interview that I did most recently is that 46, she said, I need to be on Survivor. 47, it was more so, I want to be on Survivor. And I think that mentality really helped her play this absolutely awesome, dominant game that we got to see. So it's a really cool moment because, we have had sometimes alternates go on to win the season. Someone like Tina in Survivor 2. We've had someone like Austin get put on and make a very deep run. But I don't think we've ever had a scenario where Rachel was the alternate and then about 9 months later gets called back, goes to Fiji for the very next season, and goes on to win. I am so incredibly grateful that I have been just a small stepping stone in Rachel's journey. The 2 screenshots I have in my tweet are from the 2 conversations that we got to have out on the island. She and I had a lot of conversations in between as well. I did not know that she would be on the cast of 47 before she made it out there, but I was so happy to see her. And I'm so happy that she ended up taking home the win as well, because it feels almost like extra meaningful knowing how long of a journey this has been for her.
No, that's so sweet. I will say she did quote tweet that. So if you haven't already clocked it, she did quote tweet it.
And I'm very, very honored by that.
And Mike, I don't know. Now look, please, obviously shut down any questions you are not able to answer.
Okay.
I'm very, very curious. As you know, we've sort of talked about it here. I have been following your stuff for a long time now, so I definitely followed all your preseason coverage for 47. I recall, if I'm not mistaken here, almost everyone in the preseason was fixated on a male character with long hair, right? Was this someone or a big beard? Was it? I think it was 46. Someone with a big beard that was. I think that you had talked about after being an alternate.
Mm-hmm.
Do you expect to see alternates back every single time? Will we ever get to see who this mystical person was that was on the minds of all of? Was it the 46 cast?
I feel like someone in those interviews were saying that they had eyes.
I remember this. And it was everyone was talking about the same person.
I am not at liberty to say.
Okay. Hey, there we go.
No, joking.
I'm unlike my strategy for Stu. I will plead the 5th at this moment. In due time, my friends, in due time.
Absolutely. Love it. Love to hear it.
I'll take us through on those polls. I'm so curious to hear what everyone has to say about those.
Before we get to the polls, I just want to show this thing of Roy. He will be watching the preseason interviews as well.
I'm glad you check him out. Yeah, the ones on Island, especially, like with no besmirching to the ones I get to do virtually. Those are rather even longer and more unfiltered. I did them for 46, of course, it was more time with that loving group of wackadoodles. And Dalton Ross kind of teased this, but for 48, I will say, had a lot of fun with this cast as well. So I'm excited for everyone to get to meet them in a couple months.
I will say I also watched the preseason interviews. Just
thank you.
I got to see them react to their first look at the Bryson Wen present, so that was pretty exciting as well.
Yeah, that's fun.
That was a fun reveal.
Yeah, there were. Without getting into too much, I imagine there were a fair amount of them there.
All excited. It happens every year. I love it.
It does. Okay, so we're going to move on to the polls now. For those that don't know, I post polls on X, on our Instagram, on our X account, and it's just to gauge the reaction from the fans, how they're feeling. We had 4 this time because it's the finale. Why not? The first one is, if you were in Rachel's position, who would you have sent to make fire? Now, before I get to the results, each one of you, which one of you would have? Speaking hard. Which one would you have picked? Phil.
Oh, okay. We usually start with me, but I feel like Mike's our guest here. Mike?
Oh, Phil, so nicely passing the buck here. I think I would have gone Sam versus Teeny. I think on paper, if the goal is I want to get rid of Sam, then Sam versus Sue makes a lot more sense. But what Rachel expressed to me was, as much as their game was a bit pigeonholed towards the end, they did want to be an optimal player at the end of the day. And they did, and Rachel did feel like Teeny could have stood as a bit of a threat in the end as well. They were well liked, despite the fact that they were left out of of some things and openly confused. It might have been a bit of a win-win for Rachel of like, listen, love Sue. She is probably the smallest hurdle that I need to step over. So I want to get rid of either the second or, third place person in the possible obstruction of me getting this win.
I'm right there with you. I think I would have gone with Sam Versini because I feel like I would have felt as though I had the easier time against Sue. However, there is a little evil part of my brain that goes, okay, after Sam tells everyone, I don't know how to do fire. You go to Sam, you coax him, make sure that he's real comfortable. You say, oh, you know what, Sam, you don't have to do fire. I'm going to put these two against one another. And then right at the last second, you throw Sam into fire with yourself and you win right in front of everybody. Woohoo! Matthew.
I'm so thankful Rachel knew better than to put herself into fire.
Yes.
She did not need that.
Look.
Listen, I'm gonna agree with all of you and also Anthony in the chat. Sam versus Teeny. For me, what I realized upon a second watch was that was what I imagined was a big part of Rachel's narrative to sell to the jury at the end was rewarding loyalty. And I don't feel like she could have gone down that route if she threw Sue in there.
Only if Sue asked to do it. I think if Sue was like almost the Gabler-esque, like, no, put me in. I want to be the one to take him out. Then it would make sense for her narrative to do so. But otherwise, suffice to say, I don't think Sue would have been particularly happy being put in there against her.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
and Jay,
Jay,
I want to know why Sue versus Sam. Let us know in the chat.
But also, finally, Claudia agrees. But the poll has spoken, and 67% said Sam and Teeny.
Okay.
Everyone agreed with the majority.
What have we got?
8% said put yourself in versus Sam. What?
I don't know about that 8%. I wouldn't have.
They wanted something exciting out of this finale.
Yes. So the next one was, whose game did you resonate with most? Sam's scrappy game, Sue's loyal game, Rachel's advantageous game. I have to say, I'm sorry about the grammar. I didn't have enough characters, so I had to take away theirs. So sorry.
I'm gonna go with Sam's scrappy game. I really resonated with that, and I like seeing someone play from the bottom, for the majority of the game. And that's, I feel like this question, I'm not saying which one I would necessarily vote for at the end. This is saying if I was a player, which game do I feel like I would resonate with, and it's going to be Sam's.
Yeah, I mean, look, I want to say Rachel, but I hate to say Rachel's advantageous game. I mean, I think that Rachel saw, a lot of pushback in her time as well, but I think that what she did, and I think it's the best word to describe her, it was used many times in the episode, is stealthy. And I think that I would probably want to play a more stealthy game myself. You don't want to, you don't know where my strong suits are. You don't know where my weak suits are. You just know the suit I'm wearing. Mike?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a very theatrical guy, and despite the fact that Sam has touted his theater experience, nothing could have beaten Rachel's idol play.
Yeah.
Like, that was just such a spectacle that, to your point, Phil, like, you could certainly resonate with the under the radar, behind the scenes stuff. But what also really resonated for me was, like, again, Rachel being so upfront about, yes, Sam, Teeny, I'm putting you into fire. Like, there was certainly a level where she just did not give an F, and she was ironically playing for house money for $1 million. And so, I wouldn't necessarily just use that one adjective, obviously, to describe it. I know you had to do for the sake of characters. I would probably resonate more with Rachel's game because, like, it's despite the fact that perhaps her personality is more understated compared to some of the flashier players we've seen, it actually was a flashy game.
Yeah.
True.
I will say we struggled to really pinpoint the right word to use. Like me and Matthew literally went through like 6 words. We do have a late edition actually. Andy's Strategic Chaos.
I love it.
That's the writing canon.
Every time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Every time.
But
right, actually,
winner...
I'll write in Genevieve's like absolutely causing mayhem and then feeling bad about it afterwards. That is my happy medium.
It's good.
Yes. But the viewers have spoken. and 50% said Sam's scrappy game. That's where they would have resonated with most.
Right.
Good
That's what
spread.
I mean. That's what I talked about earlier about how it's an interesting dichotomy where I think on paper a lot of fans tend to favor the one that is less about inherent on idols and advantages, but it's not a hat for every head.
Exactly. So our next poll was fill in the blank. I like when a final immunity challenge is a giant obstacle course, a concentration game, an endurance comp, or just something else. I'm going to go to Matthew first because he hasn't started.
I love the one because I find it to be so cinematic, but the one with the balls going down the track. What's that called?
Motion, yeah.
Motion. I think that is such a. It's one that I feel like anyone could win in a sense. You know, like I agree that anyone could really win like any of the challenges. Like you just have to, want it. But it gives I would say it gives the illusion that everyone's on the same level. They all have the same equipment. They all have the same track. They all have the same balls. It's their choice how they go about placing those items. I don't think we can't do it every single time, but I also like a good stand on a log and hold on to the idol in the center until you fall off type of challenge too. It's in moderation. For this one, I'm going to say I like the concentration game.
I will go with endurance comp only because, and I believe that I think Tegwith had posted about this, like hands on a hard idol. I don't care if you make it every final endurance challenge. Like, I don't care that it's just people standing on post. There's a reason why it was the first immunity challenge final immunity challenge for so long. It's how bad do you want it? And while it's always fun to test a different set of skills in something like an obstacle course with a puzzle at the end, and it's more of a spectacle, there's something so beautiful about the simplicity of that I would say endurance comp, but I would say more specifically, you could do the Thailand-esque hold coins through your hands in this agonizing position, or the Pearl Island stand on a platform in the water, but something simple like that, how bad do you want it, is something that's always really appealed to me.
I was going to say, if you wanted pain, Australian Survivor final immunity.
Yeah, see, that's the thing is that that's almost an endurance comp, but it's like high concept at the same time.
Oh yeah. And by the way, if you've never seen the Christy Bennett Australian Survivor 2016 fight, the standing on the that is a great one. I love it.
Yeah, that is the best version of hands on a hard idol I've ever seen in my life.
Huh, I gotta start watching International Survivor.
You got it. Listen,
you do.
So what I said earlier about 2024 being the best year of Survivor in the 2020s, it very much is Australia included. I would say, Phil, if anything, watch this most recent season, Titans v Rebels. You don't need to know anything about prior seasons, and it's my favorite season of Australian Survivor, and one of my favorite seasons ever. It is so wild and so good.
You got me. I'll do it. I mean,
yes.
Look, and I'll say this, Mikey, you took the thoughts out of my head, spit them out through your mouth. I'm right there with you. I'm endurance comp all the way. I am will to win. I want to see how bad you want it. I really don't need all the extra business. I'm right there with you. What do we got?
Just a note, Phil, once you've watched the episodes, you should go back and watch our coverage of Survivor Australia.
Ooh.
Yes. Oh, we've lost it. But I can tell you, just because Matthew has gone 2 seconds, I've got it right here. So I can tell you that 50% said an endurance comp.
Oh, okay.
We then had 29 saying a giant obstacle course and 21 saying a concentration game.
Interesting. So maybe people are a little out on Samotion. They've seen it too many times in the end. They're fine with something else. So I guess it's just like, does the letters on the wobbly platform count as concentration as well, I guess?
I think so. If Ben was concentrating, he'd know that the U was an N.
That's true. It's true.
M, W, whatever the mix-up
U is a U, yeah.
I'd say that's a concentration dexterity one. And our final poll, which kind of also leads us into a question that Cara asked. Where does season 47 rank in the new era seasons for you?
Oh,
this is tough.
Also, while you think, Megan in the chat just says, I love Simulation and will die on that hill.
Samotion. Okay. Mike, I'm going to have you go first on this one. This is
you're so generous, Phil. You're just so good at etiquette.
So just so you know, the options are number 1, best of the new era. It's high for sure. Middle of the road, and low wasn't fun for me. Those are the 4 options.
God, it's so tough because, like, so I also believe, in addition to all my other histrionics about this year, I think 45 through 47 is one of the most solid 3-season streaks we have ever had as well. I don't know if it's due to the 90-minute episodes or due to the cast or just the seasons in particular, but, like, we have been eating very good. So it's right in the mix for me. All my New Era seasons, it comes down to, like, 42, 45, 46, and now 47 on top of it. And it just really depends on what time of day you're asking me, if I've eaten, if I'm tired, etc., as to how I rate things. So, like, I don't want to say middle of the road because it doesn't feel middle of the road in terms of Survivor seasons, but it might in terms of New Era seasons because, like, at worst, that would put it smack dab in the middle of 7 seasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it really varies, but I think... so what was the second option again?
So the second option was it's high for sure, with the first option being number 1.
I'll put it in its high for sure. I think that 45 and 46 were more, especially 46, were the more like comedic, goofy, character-focused seasons that I personally like in terms of Survivor, whereas 47 was definitely more gameplay-focused, but I can appreciate a lot of what 47 had to offer. And so I'll say high up there, though. Again, it can vary for me between like 1 to 4, if I'm being completely honest.
Okay.
Yeah, I think ranking the New Era has always been so tough for me. And I think it comes down to the fact that, like, this is going to sound so stupid. It's almost, I feel like it's almost going to sound very similar to Teeny being like, I'm either going to do the right thing and win the game, or it's like, oh, you're either going to win or lose. Because what I was going to say is it's so tough because every season is so similar, but they're also so different.
Right.
And it's, but once again, like, what am I even saying there? But I think that what I really look for is a sort of North Star contestant that I cannot get enough of, that I'm just like, I'm looking for them in every single angle. And I got to be honest. First of all, hello, Matthew. Welcome back.
Let me back in.
Yeah, I thought you said you ran out after the most juicy question where we have to hold our feet to the fire.
Right. What are you avoiding? No, but I think that in a weird way, it's, probably still the top spot for 50. I think that looking forward to Q's antics in 46 is like a Wednesday ritual that I think it will be hard for me to return to. Whether he was going to piss me off, whether I was going to have to sit here and argue with Ali about how he's the best and Ali will tell me he's the worst, whatever it was, Q made us feel something. And I think that simply because of that, I really put 46 at the top of the New Era. But I don't think that 47 is that far behind. I think that we got very close to that with Andy, where I was like, what the heck is this wackadoodle Andy going to do this week? And I would look forward to it. And again, I was not always his biggest fan. There were times where his antics were pissing me off. But let me tell you, they made me feel something. And I remember that was my big response to Ali last season when he said, oh, I don't like you. I said, but he's making you feel something. There is no one that looks at you and feels nothing. It's impossible. You either love him or you hate him. And I think that with Andy on this season, I got a little bit of that. So what are my options again, Ali? I'm sorry.
Number 1, best of the New Era. It's high for sure, middle of the road.
High for sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I can tell you both that 50% said that it's number 1 best of the New Era for them.
I mean, I'm not surprised by that. I think that there was a lot of compelling stuff that was happening. I think Operation Italy, also helps buoy it a bit in that, like, it was one of these rarefied Survivor moves that is equal parts, like, strategically sound, but also very flashy and good TV. I think when a season also finishes strong with what people feel like are a deserving winner, that certainly helps. And I think also, I talked about this on an RJP podcast recently, I think that 46 and 47 are, like, almost kind of like the polar opposites of what people might get out of Survivor seasons. Like, if you just want the chaotic character drama-filled stuff without a huge amount of great gameplay, that's 46. If you want, like, a very competitive field full of complicated strategy, that's 47. And so it really is, pick your quite opposite of poison.
It is.
True.
Also, Jay just says, Phil, don't you dare. Andy is.
Look, I love me some Andy. He kept me coming back week after week.
Also, just shout out to James. Thank you, James.
Oh, thanks,
Shout
James.
out James.
Ooh, hi, James.
But that is the tribe has posted. We got through it.
Wow. How are you guys feeling right now? Do you do things in the off season? Because otherwise, you're adjourning for. It'll only be 2 months, but it'll be a long 2 months at that.
It feels, but I have to keep reminding myself it's 2 months because you're right. It's not a lot
It's
of
only 2
time,
months.
but it does feel a little bit like it. I mean, I'm excited. I loved this season so much. I would be one of those 50% in saying it's the best of the new era. It's definitely recency bias, but come on. That's how I feel right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a great season. So I'm looking forward to a nice little vacation. We have the holidays coming up. We have a new year, new Survivor seasons. Also, let's not forget, Australia is coming back with some exciting seasons. I'll just leave it at that.
Yes.
Seasons with an S.
Seasons. Yeah.
Go ahead,
you go.
Ollie, please.
Oh no, I was just going to say, I know that myself and Randy have been talking, and we may be doing some off-season coverage of some things, not to throw any promos out there, but next week on Patreon, that's happening. Where is it? There it is. But no, yeah, we've been talking, and I think off-season for me, I can't do it this time. I have to talk about something Survivor related. So.
It's tough. It's tough when you also want to kind of like keep your reps in, right? Like you don't want to go cold when you get back into the gym. But I'm very excited. I mean, what a note to end on in this year. I think this was such a fun season, such a fun cast. Again, such a different season from what we got to start off this year. And yeah, it is wild to me that we only have a couple months. I need to start working on those 48 interviews because before we know it, like it'll be February and then this cast will drop and we're going to be jumping right in with a whole new group of people before the ink even dries on Rachel's check.
I like at the reunion when they said, "Here is the sneak peek of Survivor 48," and they all booed. I was like, honestly, I'm booed.
Well, it's also awkward for them, right? Because they have to like hold and pretend to be excited for a season that A is coming after theirs, and B they have no idea anything about. Like they're not watching the video.
Oh, that's true. That's true. They can't see any of it.
Nothing is taped yet.
Well, I just wanted to thank you all for being here. And Mike, thank you so much for being our very special guest for the finale episode. You're welcome back at any time. We loved speaking to you today. And just honestly, thank you so much.
Truly, whatever.
Yeah, no, listen, the pleasure was all mine. You guys are awesome. I love the very unique approach to this show as well because listen, it's almost like a second way of experiencing the season for these contestants is watching it through the lens of social media and the fandom. So I do love tackling it from this angle as well. This was a lot of fun. You guys had some really fantastic questions. I hope I sounded semi-cogent in getting through them, but I'm really just very happy. You know, happy to have Survivor in our lives right now. Happy to cover it in the way that I get to as we also start careening towards this milestone 50. And happy to be here today to talk with you three. This was such an honor and a service, and I hope you all have some very happy holidays. Get some rest, even if you're doing some podcast reps before we get into 2025, because there's a lot that's going to be happening in the process, and I don't know. It's a great time to be a Survivor fan, man. I am just absolutely giddy.
Couldn't have said it better. The honor was all ours. I mean, Phil, Ollie, I know that I'm going to miss you two during the off season as well. Anything you want to say to close us out?
I'll be looking forward to my lunch.
Oh my God.
What's your Italian meal of choice? Did you get to pick that, or is it bought for you?
No, he gets to pick.
Now look, I'm not gonna run my friend Matthew here dry. There is a great place called John and Vinny's here in Los Angeles, but I think it's a little bit lofty. So look, we'll figure it out. We'll figure something that's fair.
we gotta put a cap on.
Yeah, I'm not gonna send him to Beverly Hills.
Yeah, don't break the bank.
Exactly. But I'm really, really excited. Mike, truly, this was such a treat for all three of us. I mean, I have been wanting to talk to you on a podcast since I knew what a podcast was. So this is genuinely like a dream for me. Very, very excited.
Oh my God, thank you. I was like, me? This guy? What do I do?
Oh yeah,
this guy. I'm
the jamoke behind the microphone, making awkward references to these poor players, and then hoping that they come on to the next season and get to win and quote tweet my factoid that I interviewed them the previous season.
And we'd come back for it every single time.
Oh
yeah. Hey, that's your brand. You got it. Ollie, how about you?
No.
Ollie never has ever had
Freaking Anna Delvey Dancing with the Stars-esque answer.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Never had in the podcast chat, but we love him all the same. Love
That
you
is
all.
true. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who has been on this journey with us throughout the entire
Yes.
season. We love doing Got Something For You, from our very first spark or snuff at the season where we rank the Castaways Island outfits to our liking, to the finale episodes. You have all been so fantastic. Thank you to everyone who has been in our live chat, being our extra co-host for this time. We love chatting with all of you, and we cannot wait to see you at Survivor 48. Have a happy holidays, everyone, and Happy New Year. We'll see you in 2025.
We'll be back.